Hello guys, I'm Ardarion and today we will be doing something a little bit different. Today we will be reviewing the Minecraft versions and putting them on a kind of a tier list that I've got going on here. So, to my left we have lined up all the beta versions and to my right the full releases. So those are the ones that we'll be taking a look at and rating. So without further ado, let's get to it. So, the first version we're gonna take a look at is 1.3, beta 1.3. Why this version and not the previous beta releases? Well, that's just because I started playing the game on 1.3 actually, so I can't actually speak from experience about the previous versions, so we're not gonna rate them. But still, okay, let's take a look at 1.3. We got beds and repeaters. These are major game changers right there. So, without a bed you would have to stay in your house for the entirety of the night, and that was just no fun. So with the addition of beds, we can now skip the night. That's a major change. And repeaters, of course, what redstone creations would be complete without repeaters. So these are very extremely useful. And of course, slabs, also a pretty basic component, but still incredibly useful. So 1.3, I think, will land somewhere in the ranges of A tier for me. However, now Minecraft 1.4, the major additions were cookies and wolves. So cookies, I mean, they're a pretty terrible food source. And the dogs, I mean, you can't pet them, you can't throw them sticks or make them catch a frisbee. I mean, what can you really do with dogs? So they're not the best implementation of dogs that could be done. So in my eyes, this is a pretty low ranking update. So we're gonna place it around, I don't know, is it an F tier or E tier? I'm actually gonna go with F tier. It's really nothing special. So, beta 1.5, we have an addition of the saplings for spruce and birch. We have the cobweb, which couldn't yet be obtained in survival, I don't think. And charge creepers, that's a pretty nice addition, pretty fun thing to find. And activator rails and powered rails, that's the major thing that was added. So without power rails, previously you would have to build these rail boosters. Maybe I'll improvise one for you just real quick. They were really fun, like you would put in a loop like this and two minecarts right here, they would go around and a truck running right here and it would get boosted from these two minecarts. So that was a pretty fun mechanic, but they removed it in 1.5 and added these powered rails, which were a much better replacement to be honest, but the old boosters were pretty fun, I gotta admit. So just because it removed this fun mechanic, I'm not gonna put it in A tier as I thought, I'm gonna actually put it in B tier. So 1.6, tall grass is a pretty major thing. Before that the biomes looked a little bit on the plain side, and dried shrubs, not gonna gush about those, they're not too great. Trapdoors are nice, right? So that's a pretty useful addition and it's still used in many mob farms, for example. And maps, that's the major thing. I actually didn't know that they added maps as early as 1.6, but that's actually pretty good. I mean, maps are cool and all, like you can do pixel art with them, but overall I don't think they're that useful of an addition. And yeah, these are just more of cosmetic changes. Only useful block here is the trapdoor, so that's why we're gonna rank beta 1.6. I don't know, is it a C tier or a D tier? I'm gonna go with C, just because the maps are kinda useful and kinda nice looking when you turn them into pixel art. Now, beta 1.7. The addition of Pistons, I think, makes this version a serious contender for our first S tier, and also shears for shearing sheep. Before you had to punch them, which was pretty fun. They dropped their wool then, but now you can just shear them, so nothing special there. But Pistons, I mean, that's a real game changer. So that's why we're gonna put Pistons and 1.7 actually in the S tier, our first S tier, that's right. So, beta 1.8 was the adventure update. We got Endermen, we got all these new crops like melons that can be grown and pumpkins as well, all these new meat types and generated structures like strongholds and abandoned mine shafts and villages, I think, were first added in this version. So this is a pretty large update and pretty game changing. So I think no one can dispute that this is a pretty great one, and it was so exciting when it came out. That's why I'm kind of debating between A tier and S tier, but I think I'm gonna go with A tier. So, we're done with the beta versions, let's go on onto the full releases. So here we have full release 1.0. Finally, the end dimension was added. So before the strongholds didn't have much use, now the portals were added and you can actually go to the end and fight the dragon. I don't have the dragon mob here, but you know what I mean. So also, snow golems were added, mushrooms and villagers. They were called testificates back in the day, but they were first added. They didn't have any functionality as of yet, but they were still a nice addition. And also all of these items. So potions, this is the update when the brewing came out, and enchanting. So both of those are pretty major, pretty core gameplay mechanics for Minecraft today, I think. Also, magma cubes and blazes made the nether much more interesting. Of course, the nether fortresses were added then. So this is quite a lot of additions. I think this is a pretty good update. And yeah, it just added the first boss to the game, which is pretty exciting. So that's why we're gonna put the 1.0 version somewhere. I think it also deserves an A tier. I'm kind of split between A and B, but I think I'm going with A tier. Now, on the other hand, we have 1.1 here, which only added spawn eggs. Yeah, that's right. And I mean, who uses spawn eggs now? When I play creative mode, I still use the summon command because it's quicker, I think, than looking through all these. And of course, you can customize the mobs when you summon them, not spawn them through the eggs. So these aren't very useful, I don't think, and they are pretty, I'm not gonna say pointless, but to fill up the whole update 1.1, it's just a bit on the disappointing side. So that's why I'm gonna put E or F, I think F, in the F tier. So, in release 1.2, we got the jungle biome, also the redstone lamps and chiseled stone bricks, iron golems and ocelots, as well as fire charges and bottles of enchanting. So, this is kind of a small update, I think. I mean, jungles are nice and all. Iron golems are pretty neat because you can farm them for iron, so that was pretty huge. Of course, back then you couldn't farm them, but still, it's a nice addition. But it's just not a lot of content here, and these items are pretty useless right now. So that's why we're gonna take 1.2 and put it in D tier, I think. Yeah. So 1.3, they added emeralds and emerald ore and blocks, so I think this is when villager trading was actually implemented, but they were like redoing it a couple of times, so I'm not sure if I should classify 1.3 as the definite version when villager trading was added. And I mean, it wasn't that good back then, you couldn't really exploit it, it wasn't that useful, so cocoa beans also now could be grown on trees, and yeah, it's whatever. And all these new stairs and slabs are kind of nice, and ender chests are pretty cool. But overall, this isn't a very substantial update. Oh, and yeah, jungle temples were now a thing. So yeah, they kind of added some stuff to the jungles, but overall, I don't think this is a strong update. It's stronger than the F tiers. I'm kind of split between putting it in the D or E tier. It's either high E or low D, but I think we're gonna go with D. It's kind of on par with 1.2. Now, 1.4, such a good update. The Wither boss was added, the Wither skeleton, the witch, the bat, the beacon, which is a pretty huge thing to add. Also some decorational stuff like flower pots, and also anvils to rename your items and repair them. And of course, command blocks. Oh, these new crops too, but command blocks. I mean, this is probably the thing that changed the game for me the most, so the addition of command blocks was just like a whole new world. So that's why we're gonna put 1.4, the pretty scary update, in the S tier. Okay, next up we have the Redstone update. So these three types of minecarts were added, of which only the hopper minecart is really useful, like who uses these ones? And also droppers, comparators, hoppers, and daylight sensors were all added in one update. Oh, and redstone blocks. So this is pretty huge. Like, so many more advanced redstone mechanisms could be built now. And also the first nether ore came out, the quartz. And Also, with the addition of redstone blocks, the flying machines made with slime balls are now a thing, so this I think is undisputedly a pretty great update. So that's why we're gonna take 1.5 and put it. Is it worth an S tier? I think it is. Let's put it in S tier. So 1.6, the horse update. So we have all these types of horses added, as well as carpets, and name tags and leashes are pretty useful. Horse armor and hardened clay. And I don't know about you guys, but hardened clay seems a bit underwhelming for me. So these 7 blocks have an either brown or a gray texture, and that's a lot of blocks added to the game that don't really look that much different from the others. And the colored blocks are kind of muted, and I wouldn't say ugly, but they are just not that exciting. I think what they should have done is, instead of adding clay, they should have added concrete earlier, or maybe just change the texture of clay to concrete. So that would be much better. And we finally have a use for saddles. Of course, before it could only be used to saddle pigs, which was a pretty fun mechanic, and it was made pretty much obsolete by the horses. So that's why I think 1.6 will rank in the E tier for me. We've got our first E tier. 1.7 was the update that changed the world. So we have 10 new flower types, also 2 new trees in their respective biomes. So acacia in the savanna biome and dark oak in the dark oak forest biome. Also 3 new types of fishes, that's pretty nice, and stained glass. So overall, it's nice that they added more flowers so that the grassy areas were more exciting. But then again, I think they could have done more with this update, added more things, more trees maybe even. So I'm not saying that I don't like this update, but it just could have been bigger, could have been more exciting. So that's why we're gonna take 1.7 and rank it somewhere in B tier. So now 1.8. I've actually made a mistake earlier when I said that flying machines were added in 1.5. They were actually added in 1.8 with the addition of slime blocks. I forgot that they weren't a thing back then. But anyway, we have a lot of new blocks. The addition of ocean temples added the prismarine crystals and sea lanterns, everything. And we also have armor stands now, which were a pretty huge deal in the technical community, as you may know. So a lot of command block creations, even mine, were based on armor stands, doing various weird things that they weren't intended to do. Also, we have rabbits and elder guardians and guardians, which is very good. Like, the oceans finally had something a bit more interesting. We have sponges that are available in survival, which is great. And these new stone types I'm not too crazy about. So they just clutter your inventory. They don't look too good, with the possible exception of andesite. And I don't know, I think just stone would have been fine. And also banners were added. They are pretty cool to have, to customize, and yeah, they're a good addition. So overall, this is a pretty good update, I would say. I don't know if it's worth an S tier, but A tier I think it definitely deserves, just for the technical additions like the flying machines and the armor stands, which were used with command blocks. Now in 1.9, 2 new types of command blocks were added, which were pretty useful. Before you had to have clocks, redstone clocks running all the time. Now you could just chain command blocks together. Also pack ties was added, path blocks, and the end cities, and chorus fruit, and the shulker mob. So 1.9 was the combat update. So we got elytra wings, these shields, spectral arrows, tipped arrows, lingering potions, chorus fruits, and 2 new enchantments, including mending, which was a pretty big deal. So I'm gonna take 1.9 and put it. Is it worth an A tier? I don't know, maybe B tier. Let's go with B. So 1.10 was the Frostburn update, which gave us all these new blocks, of which only magma is really useful, and all these 3 new mob types, of which none are really useful. So I would overall rank this update fairly poorly. I mean, you could do mob killing systems other ways instead of using magma, so this isn't like a crucial game-changing block. So this is a pretty weak update. I'm gonna go with either, yeah, I think it's an F. Now, 1.11 shulker boxes were added, which are pretty useful in the game, very useful in fact. Also, Totems of Undying, 2 new map types, or explorer maps, observers and woodland mansions with illagers and evokers. Also, llamas were added then. So this isn't like a big game-changing update, but it's got pretty useful things like observers, which are used heavily in various redstone creations. So this is not a terrible update, but it's also not a great update. I think it deserves a place kind of in the middle, so it goes into the C tier. So 1.12 was the colorful update, and we finally have clean, nice, vibrant, colorful blocks, the concrete, and concrete powder, which is pretty cool. It's like dyed sand or something. So concrete is a great addition, I think, and it should have been added earlier instead of hardened clay. Glazed terracotta, I'm not too crazy about. I don't think it really fits the aesthetic of the game, and of course cool floor patterns could be built with it, but I really don't like it that much, any of the textures really. Now beds, colorful beds are a nice addition, not very useful or anything, but still pretty good addition, and parrots are pretty fun also. So again, not a great big update, not too game changing, although we have new building blocks now, so that's pretty useful. So I don't think it's at C tier, I think it's actually a B tier. So 1.13 was the Aquatic update, and look at all these mob types, look at all these coral blocks and everything, it's great. So this should have been added way back in 1.8, where they were trying to make the oceans more interesting with the ocean monuments, but this is great. Finally, the oceans are worthwhile, worth going to, worth visiting. And also we have the turtle shells, the tridents, which are a pretty great addition. Phantoms were added, which I don't really like. I'm gonna push it into the sun, yeah. That's what you deserve. And also the stripped logs and wood blocks, which were previously in the game, I mean the wood blocks, not the stripped logs, were previously in the game, but they were unobtainable in survival, so it's nice that we can finally build with them in survival. It's a pretty great addition. Also, all these new trapdoors and buttons and pressure plates are nice. And yeah, bucket of fish, it's also a pretty fun addition. So this is a pretty great update overall, and I think it's deserving of an A tier. So 1.14 brings us all these things, but also brings giant lag spikes, and basically the game became unoptimized instead of optimized, and a lot of bugs and everything. So it's not great on the technical side, but in terms of the sheer additions like the workstations and the new slabs and stairs and walls and everything, it's pretty good. The workstations aren't terribly useful, like you could add their functionalities to previously existing blocks, I think. Only the composter is pretty nice, but they're not really crucial in gameplay. And of course, the raid event is a pretty nice addition. At least the first time you do it, it's really fun, but then when it happens like 5 or 6 times in one Minecraft day, it starts to get tiring. But anyway, it's a nice change of pace in Minecraft. Also, the Wandering Trader is a nice cyclical event that happens in your world. There wasn't really anything like it before. Pandas, kind of useless. Foxes, also pretty useless. So all these new plants were added, which is pretty great. Always something to make the biomes more interesting. Campfires were a brilliant addition. I really enjoyed them. And scaffolding is also pretty useful. I use it sporadically, let's say, but it's still a nice addition to have. Dice were kind of redone, which I don't think was necessary, but it is what it is. And the crossbows were added, and maybe I'm just not used to them yet, but I'm not having that much fun shooting them compared to the bows, which are really optimized and really fun to use. And of course we have the 14 new villager professions. So villagers were supposed to be the star of this update, but actually this update just really broke them. So it doesn't shine on that side, let's just say. But anyway, this is a kind of a mixed bag of an update. So I think it will go in C tier. So guys, that was all the updates. As you can see, we don't really have an equal distribution going on here, so most of the updates went into the upper part of the tier list, which makes sense because the developers worked so hard to bring us these new features, these new additions, and more often than not, they are good additions to the game. They enhance the gaming experience, they introduce new mechanics, and they are really fun to play around with. But some updates were just kind of lacking in terms of content, and some were pretty pointless, so that's why they gravitated downwards. But overall, I think most of the updates are pretty great, so that's why we have such saturation in the upper part. But I think that is gonna do it for today, so thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next episode. Bye!